welcome to On the Couch with Marcia M, the show where we talk about real issues with real people. Today we're asking the question, do human rights really exist? And on the couch with me I have human rights activist Maxie Hayles. Welcome, Maxie.
Okay.
Welcome.
Okay.
And also I have Alston and Melda from Geneva. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Okay, Maxie. Wow.
Wow.
Human rights activist, award-winning man. I'm so glad to have you here. Lifetime achievements. You've done so much in terms of human rights. Why do we still have to be campaigning for human rights, Maxie?
That's a good question, because we live in a society which is endemic with racism. From the hundreds of years it's been perpetrated throughout history. And we live in a country which practices racism but doesn't want to admit that it does exist.
Okay.
And most of the issues are always being swept under the carpet. We are led to believe recently that we live in what we call a post-racial age, which is absolutely nonsense.
Okay.
It's an American theory, because President Obama was elected president. They assumed that because that happened there, we're free from the racism. Well, they can go and sell that to someone else, not to Maxie Hayles. This country, over the years, have ruled 2/3 of the world. It's under the French, I think, got the Sahara Desert. Okay. So this country should be a beacon for race issue and race equality, but it's not. Okay. And on a regular basis, day to day, our people, black people I'm talking about, has been murdered, brutalized, criminalized, you name it. And so the issues keep perpetrating itself. Okay. And one of the reasons for that, Marcia, is because as black people, I think we do not use the race card enough. We've got a Race Relations Act, which actually give us the right to use, and the question is, why do we have it in the first place? 50 years since it's been inaugurated, still, it's very little has been achieved. And I hate to say that.
What do we know about it?
Well, yes, a lot of people don't know about it. And people like me who has to monitor this racial terrorism, as I'd like to call it, because over a period of time, it then becomes terror, because people have been called names, they've been brutalized. Between 1973, 72, well, those were the worst period in our history.
Within the UK?
Within the UK. Over 31 black minority people, I'm using the political black, have been murdered by the police, by the state, by individual racist thugs, and very little has been achieved. And this is one of the reasons I do not refer to the 1980s as riots. I refer to that period as uprising, because it was black youths decided that, listen, enough was enough, and they took the appropriate action by reacting. I mean, we had a situation like the Deptford Fire, 13 killed, 13 dead, nothing said.
That was young people who were out at a party?
Yes, and until now, there is no one has ever been held accountable for that racist murder. And that led to one of the biggest demonstrations by black people in this country. Over 20,000 black people marching down in the street. And for that, Marcia, the police then introduced a thing called Operation Swamp. That was what it was. It was a direct result of that march to get even with the protesters, and that then led to the inner cities uprisings, and that was then. But over the years, we've seen examples of.
So what are you saying, Maxie? That so when black people protest, or when black people unite, then unite against something that was just unjust, that somehow within the way the British system works, either technically or legally or in some way that's
People
utilised against the people, would then penalised for taking action?
Yeah, let me give you an example.
Does that really happen?
Well, I think so.
Okay.
If you take, let me give you an example. You know the word black. Why they were afraid of black power? You know, the word black. If you put the word black aside, it doesn't really mean much. But if you bring the word power with black, then it's dynamic. And this is the sort of thing that goes on. And we get penalized because we have a united front. But we don't, and this is one of the reasons why I admire the newly found Black Lives Matter movement, which is creating havoc, you know, creating attention, because the racist white media does not report issues of racism. I mean, we've got a situation where we've got the
let's introduce Alston now. Alston
and situation between, you know. So.
I mean, just speaking about uprisings and where again even uprisings are dubbed as riots. So that's really saying that it's kind of very criminal and it's just chaotic.
That's right.
Okay?
And
it's not really about people standing up and fighting and protesting.
It's protest, lobbying, because it's the riots. Because it's the voice of the unheard.
Yeah. And so I'm going to bring Alston in right now because I know that as a consequence of there was an uprising in Birmingham in 2011, and that was after Mark Duggan.
Yeah. Well, I'll take a little bit of issue there.
Yeah.
Because
you
I would
what
like
happened there.
That, as far as I'm concerned, was a riot.
Okay.
It makes a difference because
people just went crazy.
People were reacting to a particular situation.
Okay.
And it wasn't anything which was historical in the sense like...
And it wasn't a structure.
No, it wasn't structured. I saw people stealing things from the stores in town and what have you. That associated, that to me is a riot.
Okay. Yeah. So let's look at, so there was a response to an action and there was a riot. Okay. As a consequence of that, this impacted on your life, Alston. Could you share on how that impacted on your life, a consequence of that riot situation?
Yeah, well, it's been 5 years this week since the riots, the 9th of August.
Yes.
And a friend rang me yesterday and asked me if I've seen the Evening Mail. I said no. And what happened is they've blown up the whole thing in the paper about the helicopter shooting.
Okay.
And that's what my son
Tell us about the helicopter
was
shooting.
supposed to be involved in. Well, he got arrested for the helicopter shooting.
Okay. So a helicopter was somebody shot at
somebody
a helicopter during that riot.
Somebody shot at a police helicopter. But what the police said was that these guys called the police to come to try and shoot them.
That they set them up?
That they set them up. That was what they said.
Okay.
So apparently my son was said to have been involved in this helicopter shooting. When they've checked his records and everything, he wasn't on the scene.
He wasn't even there?
He wasn't even there. So they've done him under the guilty by association.
Okay. And when you say they'd done him, what did they do?
Well, they gave him 23 years.
23
years
imprisonment?
Yeah, and all that was for a phone call and his picture being on YouTube with connected to a gang.
A gang.
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody shot at a police helicopter. Yeah. Your son was not there. Your son had been on YouTube with other people that were possibly in a gang.
Yeah.
But he wasn't there when the crime was committed.
No.
And now your son is serving a 23-year
And they could prove by telephone
that he wasn't there.
Yeah, they could prove that he was about 4 or 5 miles away. They've proven it that he wasn't there.
Right. But with this, the joint enterprise law, he can be found guilty of a crime without being there.
Yeah. Too many, just to support that.
Yeah.
Too many, that's an old, I think it's an 108 years law or something to that effect. It's totally wicked because it targets black people, black youths. Because the jails are being full with black youths based on an association with similar. This is, and we really need to protest strongly. We really need to develop a movement to really destroy that concept. Because that's what's, how many youngsters are they going to incarcerate because they stood on the scene and they were looking? It is absolutely ridiculous. It's unfair, it's wicked, and it's racist. That's what's happening there with Alston. And we need to have a strong movement to really lobby for that. But one of the things is, sorry to be here, but one of the things is, our people are usually too relaxed. And we're too reactive as opposed to being proactive. When issues like these, when our young people, when our young people fall in the jails, and they're not coming out. But if it's carnival, they're out there.
So Alston, your son. So what age was your son when he was sentenced?
Well, he was
23 years. He's a life sentence.
Yeah, he's a life sentence. Yeah, he was 26 at the time. He's 31 now, and he's got to do half that sentence.
So he's served 5 years.
He's served 5, and he's got to do another 6 before he can even think of parole. And I think the only thing that's keeping him strong is because the majority of guys in the prison where he's at is doing
the
35.
thing.
Some are doing 35
and 40.
So
and these are majority black guys who are doing this sentence. And what they do in the system, when they sentence somebody to like 20 and 30 years, they'll send them to the furthest part of England and try and lose them in the system.
So it's even hard for people to visit them and they just lose touch with their family and their community.
Real cause for concern.
Yeah, that is tragic. So, I mean, we're talking about lobbying and campaigning. Now, we've also got Melda here, who I know is part of a group, 2 groups actually. One in particular, Jenga, and there's another justice group you're involved in.
The one I started was West Midlands Against Injustice.
That's it, West Midlands Against Injustice.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, Melda, your story, because again, your son is also serving a life sentence.
That is correct, yeah.
Just tell us a bit about your experience for your son.
Well, my case is very long and complicated, simply because I was a serving officer with the West Midlands Police. My son was engaged to a young lady who, unbeknown to him, was involved in numerous relationships with different men, some of whom were Premiership footballers. Incident, she was attacked and killed. Obviously, what they had done, they pretty quickly assumed it was my son who had caused it. However, what the police had done, had given out information to the press before any DNA or anything was found out, that my son and I were involved.
And that was you as a serving police officer?
I was a serving officer, yes. So I wasn't at the scene, I wasn't there. I had a call from her mother telling me that
she'd been killed.
No, she'd been attacked by my son. I was out shopping with my daughter at the time, who was 12 years old. And I almost fainted in the shop when she called me. So I proceeded to ask her, could you tell me what happened? More than once I asked her that question, and instead of answering me, she hung up, which I thought was strange. However, I couldn't get hold of my son that day, and I didn't know that the young lady who had been attacked had disconnected his phone. So I wasn't able to get hold of him, despite what the police were telling people, that talking, etc.
So your son, consequently, your son was sentenced?
He was 21 years at the time, and he's sentenced to 24 years for a crime he didn't do.
A crime he didn't do?
He didn't do it, for her murder, and the DNA proved that the blood they found at the crime scene.
That it wasn't?
Yes, they had information on it was not my son, but because he's black, she was white. It's not a thing of black and white. And when I was told by my barrister that I need to turn against my son, and I said I'm not turning against my child because I know how he was brought up. He would not have committed such a serious crime. Things began to change a lot in many ways, where information was withheld. I was told, my legal team was told certain information should not be given to me. I was threatened by the police.
Okay. And did you have to leave the force?
Because of this, I had to take early retirement to fight for him because I was told while I was still serving, I wasn't allowed to fight or speak about him or do anything to assist him in any way. So I took early retirement from the force to fight for him, and that's what I've been doing.
Maxie,
The case has been referred to BROMO, the Birmingham Racial
Okay.
Attacks Monitoring Unit, then.
at that time.
Yeah, but it no longer exists,
Yeah.
the unit. And one of the things is, we're literally powerless. Although it's a community independent based organization, we are very limited as to what we can do.
Yeah.
We often challenge individuals as well as the status quo, but we're funded by the local authority. One of the problems
But
is
now, Bromley doesn't exist anyway.
Bromley doesn't exist.
So what do we have?
So nothing actually, and I'm about to come and this is recently, Theresa May, who is now Prime Minister, she was Home Secretary, she at least challenged the police. Now, after the Brexit and the blue light for the racists over Europe, they have now realized that red light or whatever, green light, I would have liked to refer to it as a red light, really, a danger.
Warning.
They now decide to give a meager £2.4 million, that's what the new Home Secretary says, to stem the tide of racial terrorism. What a joke. I'm saying to them, that's pittance. Start doubling that. And by the way, the police figures are totally inaccurate because by not having an independent community-based organization such as the Birmingham Racial Attacks Monitoring Unit, which would monitor and give the statistics, they're not defending. So I take no notice of police figures, as far as I'm concerned, should be trebled. So I'm saying now, we're saying, and this is what we should be saying, we should be hammering on the Home Office door to say, listen, now that you see that Brexit, and by the way, within Brexit, I don't even know if they take on board, that we are going to have a recession. And what happens when we have a recession? Black people suffer more, not just in the economic field, but also racism goes sky high.
No, I'm just going to ask a question. Sorry, I'm cutting you, I know. But Maxie and Alston and Melda, okay, but the joint enterprise law isn't just for black people.
It's not only for black
White
people.
people.
It's for everyone.
Also,
but mostly you find that the majority of prisoners are black, and it's used against black people. So it's a case of divide and conquer.
That's right.
So it's dividing as many as they can. Another problem, Maxie had touched on it earlier. The problem we find is that within the black community, people are afraid, they are reluctant. Some of them are even snitches. They snitch on your black community. And it's a case where it's a divide and conquer. So at the end of the day, if we're not prepared to work together to address this, it will keep going on.
And this is
but if you're innocent, it doesn't really matter about what is innocence.
The way they view innocent, law says you're innocent until proven guilty. In black people case, you're guilty, and then you try to prove your innocence, and that's how it
the other
is.
thing with joint enterprise law, you don't actually have to be guilty. You
That's
don't
right.
have to be
You don't have to do anything.
You don't have to do anything.
You just have to have a connection to one.
To the main
One
offender,
person.
to the main offender or something, and then they will.
Let me explain something to you.
Yes.
Racism starts from the young person starts to cross the pedestrian crossing. By the way they're attired, the way they walk, and then it perpetuates itself to the canteen within the schools, and so on. So we are color scheme, phenotype. You don't have to do anything before you're labeled. And until black people can understand that, you're guilty by just your existence. In America, they did it with the Latinos. You're guilty because whilst walking, racial profiling. How many times? Let me just tell you this. You're talking to someone who I've chaired 2 racial attacks units. One just up the road there, Sandwell Racial Harassment Unit, and one Birmingham Racial Attacks Monitoring Unit. The press used to call me Mr. Race. I used to receive death threats at West Midlands Police. We had to refer them all the time. It's only because I'm thick-skinned and I'm a Christian believer. Why I just say, well, you're gonna silence me. But since Bromwell existed, we worked with 5,000 cases plus
of different, is this
Yeah,
to do with
it's
crime or in general, just
No,
any
in
racist?
general, in
Okay.
general, in general. 5,000 cases
Wow.
since 1989. When we had to our abundant shop in 2010, we had 120 live cases on our books. The local authority did not do an impact assessment.
Okay.
You know what Sir William McPherson recommended anyway. So these talk about equality, what have you, makes me sick.
Okay.
And the older I get is the more I find it intolerable. But we're not getting anything. It's like next one, please. You know, and but it's up to our people. It's up to black people to empower ourselves when we have a meeting. Look what happened to Yvonne Mosquito the other day, and I led the campaign. We had meetings, we had protests,
Yes.
and
People.
one Saturday, about a dozen people turned. What's the matter with us? The reason why we're suffering like this, we do not use the race card enough, and we are not prepared to make sacrifice and stand up and be
So
counted.
Maxie, you're saying then that when we experience injustice, so this is also about, this has happened with Alston, this has happened with Melda, this has happened with this family, that family, that family, that family. This is about people coming together
Power they're afraid
and
of.
sharing and supporting one another.
Yes.
This is also about people actually not just saying, oh, this is just a situation for my family.
No.
This is for people to say.
It happened to you,
but it's also
it
for
could
people
happen
to
to
say.
me.
But is it, Maxie, are you saying that this is for people to say it's because we're black?
Yes.
You're saying use the race card.
What? Yes, they must.
It's because we're black.
Because we're black.
Is it because?
It is because we're black.
It is because
It is because we're
if
black.
I just interject in relation to my case, it's my son is black, I'm black. Had it been a white officer, it wouldn't have, the officer's child would never been in prison.
Say that?
Right, let me tell you, no investigation was conducted in this murder investigation. No investigation was conducted at all by the police. No investigation. I can prove it in more ways than one. I challenged them about it. When I challenged, I was threatened to keep silent by the police. That if I make it known bring it to the public's attention, what they would do to me. I refused to do that. I resign and I start fighting. That's the only way. When you speak out, instead of being quiet, that is why they've been able to get away with so much. Because a lot of us here in Britain remains quiet, and we tend to believe everything that the police says. That is right. And everything the police says, everyone thinks, oh yeah, they're the police. They're telling the truth. They're not.
A South American
The
theologian.
police don't tell the truth.
Listen, you want to go to an inquest to hear whether the police, they usually take the Fifth Amendment. And this is, we've got several cases right now. We have the Kingsley Borough case. We have the Julian Webster, which I chair. And the inquest, when you sit down and listen to those weeks of inquest, and they take the Fifth Amendment, I don't remember, I can't remember. But they conveniently remember what they want to remember. And this is why I like to use the term what Dr. Martin Luther King usually used, one of his quotes, justice delayed is justice denied. Hillsborough, for instance, let's just touch on 27 years before people got justice and the police corruption was there. Stephen Lawrence, they for partial justice after 20 odd years. When clients come to me, I usually say to them, it is not a marathon, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Because as good as this justice system may say or profess they are, people die, people forget. So how are you going to talk about years, you take years before you bring a judiciary review to the public domain? Are we gonna, how do we get that?
But
so we need to take more direct action. And when I talk about direct action, people will say, oh Maxie, you can't, you're radical.
Too radical.
Yes, but
what should we do?
We should, you see, like the Black
Lives Matter?
Black Lives Matter the other day, they blocked off the motorway, the airport. What happened? Media surrounded it, and we got lots of media publicity. But when they wait until anything nasty happened before they do it. So we, by any means necessary, Malcolm X, we shall survive by our instinct to survive by any means necessary. And if it means blocking the roads, blocking Downing Street, whatever, anything to gain publicity, to highlight it to the world, to show that black people are being murdered on a daily basis, not just in America but in Britain,
Maxie.
is welcome.
Okay, Maxie, I hear you. And you've also been quoting Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. We got Maxie Hayles. Maxie, you've been doing this campaigning and this for years and years and years. Why do you still have to keep going?
You know something?
Why haven't you been successful?
When people ask me, I say to them, I was born hungry.
Okay.
And I think this is my call, my purpose.
Okay.
God wanted me to
it's
do
your
this.
mission in life.
It's my mission.
Yeah.
I just have, you'll have to read when my autobiography,
That's right.
my autobiography is coming out
this year.
This year. So you will see
Exciting.
the journey and the mission, so I can't delve into that, but it's going to be launched at the House of Commons. So,
yeah, wonderful.
So it will encompass all that. But the thing is,
but why do we have to keep campaigning?
We have to keep campaigning because we're not consistent. And we're afraid not that we don't get the Mona Lisa smiles, if we protest. We must use the race card more. We must stand up and be counted. We must leave the rice and peas on a Sunday and the soup on a Saturday. And when anything untoward people, we go out and protest. But we must remember that when we protest, there will be repercussions.
Yes.
And I understand some people, they've got mortgages, they've got... But sometimes you have to, it's a fair culture.
Yeah.
And tell me now, I'm asking people this. Is that the type of legacy we need to leave to our young people like those?
Exactly.
Is that what we're going to do? Where is the Zulu spirit? Where is our ancestors' spirit of championing our cause? Where is the pride? Hence, they don't want to. That's why we.
But what do we have?
What do we have
as black people to be proud of?
We have.
Where are we going to get pride from?
It's there. It's there. It's there. What we need, our history. But this is why I just love Steve Biko. Every time we have this situation, it doesn't matter how much PhD we have, and we have a few PhD scholars. Without a black consciousness education running alongside that, you're defending nothing. In fact, if you got the academic education without the knowledge of your people and what have you, our consciousness, you're dangerous, twice as dangerous. And the establishments are usually the ones that call on those people. They never call on the local activists who underground, who knows the business. I tell you what, when you see like me, they don't really like to see people like me coming into meeting. Because you know what? When they put an agenda before me, I look at it, and I said, well, wait, what happened to the social cohesion program that 10 years ago we were supposed to have? And when I questioned that, so I said to people, you can't run that by someone like me.
But people will see you as
but
too much.
But you see, what they like is the young kids from school, from college, who doesn't know anything about the history. So we're going to repeat that again and again. It's nonsense. But what we need as a black people, we need to be serious. We need to develop a foundation. It doesn't make sense we talk, I hear this thing about leaders. We've got loads of leaders. Leaders here, lots of leaders. But guess what? Unless we've got an organization to support those leaders, those potential leaders, we're defending nothing. We need to build life. When we find those leaders, we cannot build a wall of Jericho around them with an institution that we can support them. We can support them economically, socially, politically. That they can't destroy them.
But one of the things, just you even talking about institution.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's really fine. Just talking about institution though, one of the things that I'm also very conscious of within our community is the institution of the family. And I know that in speaking with Alston around and with regards to your son Alston, there was some conversation, something you were saying about being a father and the role of a father and some of the things that you wish you had done, or just, do you want to kind of just touch on that?
Yeah, I think it's very important, for me anyway, to be around my son when he's in prison. Because what you find there's a lot of black youths in prison and the fathers are not there.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that really breaks them down because to them they've got no will to move on in life. And the black fathers have a lot to do with why
Yeah.
their sons are in prison
That's
because
true.
there was not around. It was the mothers that brought the sons up.
That's true.
And I think in a way a lot of the sons have rebelled against their fathers not being there. They've put on this macho image. And I think what a lot of the young black youths done, when their fathers wasn't around, they found older guys who was bad men
That's right.
with flashy cars, gold, this and that. Even
Isn't
today
that
my
true
son
then?
admits that his uncle was that type of person and he looked up to him.
Yeah.
So a lot of the fathers
Role models.
need to stand up.
Yeah.
Role models.
The film, Boys in the Woods, came to mind. If people watched the film and they saw the way they died, the mom was so very good, but eventually the father needed to input. I used to work as a mentor. I used to volunteer as a mentor. I used to go into the prisons and into the schools. And research shows that when the father figures around, the attainment, the education attainment of black youngsters went up threefold.
Yeah.
And I even went to Geneva twice to present a paper,
Okay.
me and some other NGOs on the issue.
What's an NGO?
A non-governmental
Office.
organization.
Yeah.
We went to the Geneva Convention, CERD Convention.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're saying is perfectly right.
Yeah.
When I used to mentor, for instance, in Holt School, and when I go into the school, you know, and it's an inner area city, where the barrier here is, and that's the type of age group, small children. Edward VIII and other kings to decorate the place. Not one black person as a role model.
Yeah.
And the young people used to say, sir, you know, and good.
I said, when I worked at Holt,
Not one black role model.
but I was
And
a
you
role model. I worked
you
at
worked
Holt, yes,
as a
and I
role
made a
model.
massive. I made a massive difference while I worked there. I can tell you
Because you were a police.
I was a police officer
Yes.
and I was educating kids about the law, staying safe, not becoming victims or offenders, and it had a massive impact. Whereas Holt has never had a waiting list until I was there.
But don't you think though that these examples, your example, is a rarity?
It
in
is.
terms of
It's
role
something that
modelling?
isn't talked about. I mean, I'm not one to blow my own trumpet,
No,
but I know I
this
did
is
a good job
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And can I just say something about young lads and not having a role
Yeah.
model? I divorced when my son was 10. My daughter was 2. So his father wasn't there. Played a bit of part in his life, but I can tell you, he was one lad who was very, very good at school. I had letters from the head teachers thanking me for allowing term after term 100% attendance. Came up with good qualifications. So, and something else I wanted just to touch on before in relation to the law, we got rid of Judge's Rule and brought in PACE. PACE stands for Police and Criminal Evidence Act. In my book, it stands for Pick and Choose Evidence, because that's what is happening.
That's what you believe is happening.
So,
Bernard Core.
Guys, we're actually getting to the end of the show, but let's just get this in.
Bernard
Just get one more from
Core.
Alston.
There's a book
Bernard
by Bernard Core.
Okay.
1972, the miseducation of the
Yeah.
I think all black parents actually should read that.
Yeah.
It was relevant then,
And
it is still relevant now.
Okay.
from water now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the full title?
I think it's the miseducation of the black child.
Okay.
I
or the black
think
youth.
that's
Okay.
yeah.
So we need to look by
it's,
Bernard
it's
Core.
Bernard Core.
Okay,
Yeah,
then.
and it's very
Wonderful,
relevant.
wonderful. You know, we had a really tight show. Just to say, you know, I mean, your son. So a murder was committed, and your son is serving a sentence for a murder he didn't commit.
That is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alston, no murder was committed, and your son is serving a life sentence. Okay. Maxie, human rights. What's going on? Just in closing.
Yes, as I said, what we need to do, we need to form. We have to get together. We have to. If we have to sleep out by the Home Secretary door on a regular basis, we have to take our case to the international arena, you know, Geneva, what have you. But we need to, the community need to be mobilized against these injustices.
So as leaders, is it yourself? Who are we looking to get us mobilized?
I think
because we also need to be coordinated, not all the different places.
I think each individual member of the community has a role to play.
Yes, we do.
Just like in the criminal elements or what have you. We all have a role to play, because it could be your son today, it could be your daughter tomorrow, and if we, and we need to. The thing we need to develop, you know, is touch one, touch all.
Yes.
Simple as that.
How do we get coordinated?
We lobby. We come together. Listen, we are people.
We don't want different groups,
we're too fragmented. Let me explain something to you. A lot of people, you know, the Americans have tea party. It's a negative thing. We as black people, we could have tea party.
Yeah.
We could get together in our small community and we could plan. During enslavement of black people, how did we manage to bring them? We used to have to hide and
that train and that was developed.
Yeah. So therefore, we need to go back to basics.
Okay.
We have the survivors.
Do you know what it is? Do you think it's that we're no longer because we're no longer hungry?
Yes.
We're no longer. It's not about. It's not. So the chains are here.
Yes.
They're not here.
Yes, that's
so
right.
we're not hungry.
So we're not hungry enough.
No.
But so anytime anything happens to one of our people, you find 10,000 people turn up.
Yeah.
And then that campaign just fizzle out. And if you get 6 people in a room after 6 months, you're lucky.
That's true.
So we need more consistency.
So we need consistency.
Yeah.
We need to be coordinated.
Empower
we need
people.
to step out of this comfort zone.
That's right.
If we want things to be better.
Precisely.
We need to know our history and understand who we are as Africans, as kings, as queens.
We're proud people.
Yeah.
Let's show that we need to get that. And we need to push for the black history, not even just on the curriculum, but for our people's benefit.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing on the couch. Okay, we've been speaking about human rights, about black pride. We've been speaking about injustice and joining together and campaigning against injustices for our community. With Maxie, Hayles and Melda and Alston, who all have different experiences of injustice and who are saying that racism most definitely is a factor for the experience that they've had. You've been watching On the Couch with Marcia M.